There are endings that don't hurt because they end. They hurt because they don't feel like any kind of victory at all. No applause, no instant relief, no rush of having won, just silence, exhaustion, and one heavy question that weighs more than any argument ever could. Was this really the best thing that could have happened? Right now, everything inside you screams that you lost, that she moved on effortlessly, that you're the one left behind, carrying the emotional wreckage of something that's already gone. This video starts exactly here, in that raw moment when the ending doesn't look like triumph. It looks like quiet defeat, when after giving everything, the only thing left in your hands is emptiness. No pride, no strength, just the gut-wrenching feeling that you let go of something massive and got nothing real in return. And that feeling is real, don't deny it, because when a man loses someone he truly loved, he doesn't feel free at first. He feels shattered, displaced, small, and that's completely normal. Almost no one talks about this exact part. Everyone talks about the after, the glow-up, the comeback, but very few stay with you in the precise instant when the ending doesn't feel like a lesson. It feels like a punishment. You convinced yourself she walked away the winner, that she kept living her life untouched, that the pain landed only on you. Meanwhile, you're left with the silence, the endless nights, the crushing belief that you were replaceable, that you were the one who truly lost. And that idea digs in deep because nothing yet has come along to contradict it. But here's what you couldn't see coming. Even though this ending didn't feel like a win, it quietly started doing its work inside you. Not dramatically, not all at once, slowly, almost invisibly. While you thought you were just surviving, something was already reorganizing itself. While you believed you were paying too high a price, you were actually being pulled out of a place that had been quietly killing you without you noticing. This video isn't here to tell you everything happens for a reason or that it was always for the best. No. This is for walking with you through that dark tunnel where you still can't see the gain, where nothing makes sense, where all you know is that it's over and it hurts like hell. Because sometimes the biggest victory doesn't announce itself when it happens. It only reveals itself later when you look back and finally understand why you had to lose what you once thought defined you. And that moment is still ahead. Before we go deeper, I want to ask you something real. Smash that like button if a painful ending once broke you. But today, you see it actually saved you. Subscribe to Relationship Psychology and turn on notifications, because here we don't talk about perfect endings, we talk about honest ones. Share this video to help other men see through the fog and drop one single sentence in the comments that captures what you can finally say with calm today. It was worth it. After an ending like this, the first thing that shows up isn't clarity. It's a false sense of defeat. You wake up every day feeling like she won, like she moved forward easily, while you're stuck carrying the emotional weight of something that no longer exists. And that perception stings because it seems to confirm everything. You gave more, you lost more, you came out worse. In this phase, your mind turns against you. It replays scenes, words, choices. It asks, what did I do wrong? When did I lose the upper hand? Why wasn't I enough? Without realizing it, you start judging the ending like a competition, as if someone had to win and someone had to lose. And in that emotional scoreboard, you always come out on the bottom. Meanwhile, she might look calm, light, even happy. And that image feeds your sense of defeat because you're comparing her outward progress to your internal process, and you're punishing yourself for not being okay yet. But here's what you can't see right now. Everything that moves fast doesn't move well. You're facing the pain head-on. You're not dodging it. You're not burying it under constant distractions. You're feeling it, processing it, dismantling parts of yourself that had been carrying too much for far too long. Even though it feels like weakness in the moment, it's actually raw emotional honesty. The false defeat hurts because it offers no immediate reward, no external validation, no quick relief, just fatigue and silence. But that silence isn't emptiness. It's space. Space for things that were badly placed to start shifting back into order, even if you don't notice it yet. This is where so many men completely break, because they mistake this exact phase for the final destination. They think the feeling of loss will last forever, that she'll always be better off, that this is just how it ends. They don't realize this state isn't a permanent address. It's a transition. Right now, you're not losing. You're releasing a version of yourself that survived by enduring. And even though it doesn't feel like it today, This false defeat is the exact ground where a different kind of victory begins to take root. Then comes something even harder to endure, the real silence that settles when everything truly ends. Not the strategic silence, not the tactical one meant to provoke, the real one, where there are no more messages to wait for, no conversations hanging, no open endings, just you, alone with yourself, and a space that used to be filled. At first, that silence feels like punishment, as if life shoved you into a corner while everyone else keeps moving. You wonder why it had to be you who feels everything, remembers everything, processes everything. In that void, your mind rushes to fill the hole with guilt, self-blame, the idea that if you'd done one thing differently, none of this would have happened. But something crucial is happening in that silence, even if you don't feel it yet. For the first time in a long time, you're not reacting. You're not adjusting to someone else. You're not measuring your words, not enduring to avoid loss. You're still. And that stillness, even though it disturbs you now, is the first real space you've had to listen to yourself without interference. While you're moving through this silence, she might keep going, talking, filling her time, looking like she's advancing. From the outside, it can make you feel even smaller, like you're the only one frozen. But the truth is different. You're not frozen. You're reorganizing. You're facing what others run from, and even though no one celebrates it, that has profound value. This silence didn't come to punish you. It came to show you something you couldn't see while you were busy holding up a story that demanded more from you than it ever gave back. In this quiet, without distraction, you start noticing details you ignored before. Built-up exhaustion, constant tension, small sacrifices that became normal. It isn't comfortable to see all of that. It hurts, but it also clarifies, because you begin to realize the ending didn't just close a relationship, it closed a way of being, a way where you always adapted to avoid loss. Right now it feels empty, but this silence isn't absence, it's space. And in that space, even if you don't know it yet, the part of the victory you still can't see is already starting to build. In the middle of that silence, something different begins to happen. You stop reacting automatically. You no longer respond on impulse. You no longer try to cover the pain with constant motion. Something inside you starts to slow down. And though at first it feels like weakness, it's actually the first real sign of strength. Because when a man stops reacting, he starts observing. He notices things that used to slip past him. He sees how much he demanded of himself, how many times he adjusted, how many quiet sacrifices he normalized just to keep something alive that no longer supported him. And that awareness doesn't arrive with relief. It arrives with discomfort. This is where real change begins, not in her, but in you. You start to understand that the ending wasn't just a loss. It was a necessary interruption. That continuing the way you were would have led nowhere new. That the exhaustion you felt wasn't temporary, it was accumulated. And that the ending, painful as it was, pulled you out of a cycle you no longer knew how to escape. While you're doing this internal work, she might still see nothing. She might assume you're stuck in the same emotional place. She might think time will just wear you down. That's normal, because this change isn't visible yet. It's silent, deep, slow, and exactly because of that, it's solid. This is the key moment where appearance starts separating from reality. From the outside, it looks like nothing's happening. Inside, everything is reorganizing. You start making small decisions you never made before. Protecting your energy, choosing where you stay and where you leave. And even though no one applauds, each one returns a piece of you. The ending still hurts. Yes, but it no longer defines you. Because without realizing it, the place where you thought you lost has become the exact place where you started to recover. And there, even if you don't call it that yet, the victory has already begun. While you were quietly recomposing inside, she kept moving forward, at least on the surface. Routines, conversations, the sense of having closed a chapter. From the outside, everything looked like normal progress. And for a while, that image reinforced your belief that the ending was your defeat, that she advanced while you stayed behind. But something subtle began to shift. Not in what she showed, but in what she started feeling whenever she thought of you. Because while she moved forward without looking inward, you were doing something entirely different. You were moving inward, not outward. You weren't covering the void. You were walking through it. And that difference matters over time. She begins to sense that you're no longer where she left you, not because you're trying to prove anything, but because you've stopped occupying the same emotional space. You're no longer the fixed point she could mentally return to. You're no longer the comfortable memory she could lean on. Something in your energy has changed, and even if she can't explain it, it starts to unsettle her. Here appears a feeling she didn't expect, continuing forward but sensing that you're actually moving ahead, because real progress isn't speed, it's direction. While she kept going outward without introspection, you were rebuilding from the foundation, not rushed, not loud, but firm. That contrast starts to weigh on her. She can keep walking her path, but she begins to notice something unresolved. Not an open conversation, but a feeling that she left a story without fully understanding what she left behind. And when that realization comes late, it turns into unease. Meanwhile, you're noticing something powerful. You're no longer comparing. You're no longer measuring your path against hers. Your journey starts to feel like your own. And when a man stops comparing, he reclaims something essential, his own rhythm. She keeps moving, but you're advancing. And there, a quiet truth begins to emerge. The ending wasn't a race you lost. It was the exact moment you stopped running in the wrong direction. Even if you don't celebrate it yet, that difference is the seed of your real victory. With time, you start noticing something unexpected. You're no longer rebuilding from pain, you're rebuilding from clarity. At first, everything was endurance, understanding, resistance. Now it's different. You're choosing, deciding what's yes and what's no, setting boundaries without needing to explain them. And this shift isn't loud, but it's profound. Here emerges a new version of you. Not the one that needs to prove strength, but the one that no longer has anything to prove. You begin organizing your life with real intention. You sleep deeper. Your thoughts feel clearer. You tend to things you had neglected. Not because the ending magically made you better, but because it freed up mental and emotional space to return to yourself. While you're doing this quiet work, she starts sensing something strange. She notices not only that you're gone, she notices you're rebuilding without her as a reference point. And that's disorienting. Because people often expect the other person to stay anchored to the ending, replaying the story. But you're not. You're creating something new, even if it doesn't have a final shape yet. She might not know exactly what bothers her, but she feels it. She senses she can no longer place you in the same mental slot. You're not the same man she knew. There's a new distance, firmer, quieter. And that distance isn't pride or bitterness. It's the simple fact that you're no longer operating from the wound. This is the crucial point where the real difference between losing and transforming becomes visible. Losing leaves you empty. Transforming leaves you aligned. You're no longer doing things to cover pain. You're doing things that support you. And when a man starts supporting himself, his presence, even in absence, completely changes. She starts feeling something slipping away without knowing why. You start feeling aligned with yourself again. And there appears a truth you couldn't see before. The ending didn't just take something away. It gave you back the chance to build from a stronger foundation. Even if you don't call it victory yet, you're no longer just surviving the ending. You're starting to win from the inside. This is the moment she begins to feel the real loss. Not when everything ended. Not when the fight happened. Not when you walked away hurt. Now, when she starts perceiving that not only are you out of her life, but you've transformed without her as a reference. And that transformation doesn't feel like direct rejection. It feels like something far deeper, being left behind. She starts noticing she can no longer mentally return to where she left you. The man you were then no longer exists, not because you changed to prove a point, but because the ending forced you to grow. And real growth creates a distance that's hard to cross. Here appears a quiet emotion that weighs heavier than any accusation, the feeling of having lost something precious without realizing it in time. Not a perfect person, but a man who was willing, present, devoted. And when that devotion is no longer available, the mind starts reviewing late what it once took for granted. While she's going through that internal revision, you're continuing forward without drama. You don't celebrate her discomfort. You don't need her regret. You're busy building a version of yourself that no longer depends on that past. And that emotional independence is what makes everything final. This is the breaking point where the last illusion shatters. The illusion that the ending was just a pause. It wasn't. It was a turning point. For you, it meant starting to live with more coherence. For her, it begins to mean understanding that the man who left didn't stay frozen in the same emotional place. She starts feeling the loss without noise, without drama, but with real weight. You start feeling a quiet pride, without needing to prove anything. And there, a powerful truth reveals itself. The ending that didn't look like victory was won, because it was won inside. And when a victory is internal, it no longer needs witnesses to be real. With time, the ending starts looking different from the outside. No longer a painful breakup, but a point of no return that reordered your life. You didn't announce it, you didn't proclaim it, you simply kept going. And that quiet way of advancing is what turns closure into something permanent. Here, something important happens. You stop needing recognition. You no longer need someone to understand what you went through. You don't need validation for your effort or acknowledgement for what you gave. You know what you endured. You know what you released. And that knowing gives you a serenity that didn't exist before. Meanwhile, she starts feeling the contrast more clearly. Not because you're doing anything dramatic, but because your absence no longer feels empty. It feels like a life that moved forward without looking back, and that weighs heavier than any accusation, because it leaves no room for the fantasy of, if only I'd done things differently. She begins to understand that the ending wasn't a mistake that can be fixed. It was a consequence, one that's now showing up in your stability, your focus, your calm. And that understanding doesn't arrive with relief. It arrives with a mix of respect and loss, because she recognizes the man who came out of this story wouldn't return the same way. On your side, you start feeling something rare, internal coherence. Your decisions align with you. Your routine supports you. Your direction feels clear. Everything isn't perfect, but everything makes sense. And when life starts making sense after a brutal ending, you understand this wasn't punishment. It was a necessary realignment. This is where victory stops being a future idea and becomes a present reality. You didn't win because someone else lost. You won because you stopped living divided. Because there's no longer a part of you waiting for something that won't come. She starts feeling the door has closed for good. You start feeling you no longer need to open any. And there, a quiet truth confirms itself. The ending that never looked like victory was won, because it gave you back a life that now truly belongs to you. And when a life belongs to you, no loss can compete with that gain. At this point, something inside you no longer moves. You wouldn't go back, even if you could. Not from pride, not from bitterness, but from clarity. This ending placed you in a more honest place with yourself. You no longer idealize what was. You no longer romanticize it. You see it exactly as it was. And that clear vision is one of the greatest conquests a man can achieve. Here, victory starts feeling stable, not as euphoria, but as quiet conviction. You know you could have kept enduring. You also know you would have kept losing yourself. And that certainty removes every lingering doubt. You no longer wonder what if. There are no more alternate scenarios. There's a clear line you will never cross again. Meanwhile, she starts perceiving something final. Not that you've forgotten her, but that she no longer has a natural place in your present. And that perception weighs, because it comes without accusations or hostile distance. It comes with normalcy, with a life that continues without needing to justify its direction. This is where many women feel the real impact, even if they never say it. Not just seeing you move on, but realizing they could never occupy the same space again, even if they returned, because you no longer fit the old dynamic. Time and the process did their work without announcement or explanation. You, on the other hand, start living your new position naturally. You don't feel above anyone. You feel at home in yourself. You no longer need to prove strength because you're no longer carrying anything that weighs you down. You're aligned. And when a man is aligned, his presence is solid, even in silence. This is the fundamental truth. The victory wasn't her losing something. The victory was you stopping the negotiation of your own well-being. And once that happens, there's no going back. Not from rigidity, from coherence. She starts feeling this ending can no longer be rewritten. You start feeling there's nothing left to rewrite. And in that contrast, a deep truth emerges. The ending that never looked like victory was won, because it turned you into a man who no longer betrays himself to avoid losing anyone. And when a man reaches that place, no past story can pull him back. Here the journey completes, not with a grand finale, but with a quiet understanding that settles without fanfare. The ending that never felt like victory was won, not because someone lost, not because you came out unscathed. It was won because this closure forced you to stand in a place you hadn't stood in for a long time. with yourself. And that isn't understood at the beginning. It's understood when it no longer hurts. You look back and see the man you were when it all ended, tired, confused, doubting his worth, believing he had failed, believing this ending said something negative about him. Today you see him differently. You understand it wasn't weakness that broke you. It was enduring too long something that no longer returned balance. And walking away was an act of honesty, even if it hurt. With time, she understands it too, not always with words, not always with explicit regret, but she feels it. She perceives the man who left didn't stay frozen in pain. She perceives you move forward without turning the ending into an open wound. And that perception weighs, because it speaks of a loss that can no longer be repaired. You, on the other hand, no longer need anyone to validate anything. You don't need recognition for what you gave. You don't need someone to return to close the circle. The circle closed inside you when you stopped asking what more you could have done and started living with what you learned. And that transition is silent but final. This video isn't about celebrating an ending. It's about understanding it, seeing clearly that not all victories feel good when they happen. Some feel like loss, like emptiness, like loneliness. But over time, those are the ones that give you the most, because they force you to rebuild without shortcuts, without masks, without lying to yourself. So hold this final message. It sums up the entire path. She lost something precious, but you gained the most important thing, yourself. Before we go, make this last conscious move. Smash that like if a painful ending once crushed you, but today you see it saved you. Subscribe to Relationship Psychology and turn on the bell, because here we don't talk about perfect endings. We talk about honest ones, and leave one single sentence in the comments that captures what you can finally say with calm today. It was worth it. Not because it was easy, not because it was beautiful, because it was necessary. And when something is necessary to keep you from losing yourself, even if it hurts at first, it ends up being the real victory. I'll be here.